day, Lionhearts. It's your old pal, Jordan the Lion. How are you all doing today? Well, great. I hope you said great. If you see that I'm sitting down, you know today is a Storytime vlog. People seem to love these, and I wanted to maybe kind of pick up where the last one left off. The last one I told you about my dreams of moving out to Hollywood and my whole first experiences just moving here and coming out for a visit and everything. But today I thought I would talk about the jobs that I've had since I was out here and how I kind of was able to stay. Sometimes I probably shouldn't have been able to stay, but something always came up, some way of staying always happened. So what I did was, I mentioned that I had had a job before I moved out here. I was coming out here to go to music school, to Musicians Institute, and I had worked a lot before I came out here, and I had a little bit of inheritance that was going to pay for my school. So my goal when I moved out here was not to work. I was going to work a ton before, and then when I came out here I was just going to focus on school. And that's what I did. School started at the end of March. That's what I did up until about June. And on my way from school to my house, there was a Tower Records outlet store. And I was walking by one day, and just like out of a movie, I saw them taping up a help wanted sign. And even though I didn't need the money, and even though I didn't need a job at the time, I just thought, you know, how cool would it be to say that I worked for Tower Records? Because I was a big Weezer fan when I moved here, and I knew that Rivers Cuomo had worked at Tower Records as well. So I went in, filled out an application, they called me in for an interview, and I remember they looked over. I had worked at CD stores in Ohio. I'd actually worked at a CD store, and I'd also worked at a music store, like that sold guitars and everything. So I had a pretty good music background, and I remember in the interview they said, "Why do you want to work here?" And I said, "Well, Tower's a historic place, plus I'm a big Weezer fan. I know Rivers worked here." And the guy who was interviewing me goes, "Yeah, I worked with him. He was a friend of mine over at Tower Video." And the guy who was running this store was who was interviewing me. His name was Sam, and Sam had worked for Tower for like 20 years. So he hired me. I was the only person they hired on that round of hiring. And my job was basically, they had bought up video stores, like VHS video stores, and they had taken over all their inventory, and they had them in this big giant space on Hollywood Boulevard that you could come and buy used CDs or used VHS tapes. So we were just basically there to sell stuff and organize things. And at this job, for the short time I had it from probably July, and I think I left it around, well, I left it in December for sure. But in that time I got to meet RuPaul, Glenn Danzig, and Lamar from Revenge of the Nerds, which was kind of fun. They were all very cool people to meet. Glenn was a little like, I don't know, he was a little intimidating, and I think he was trying to be, because I mentioned, "Oh, I'm a fan of your stuff," and he just got real kind of big-timey. But Christmas came around, and it was my first Christmas. I was, you know, not being in Ohio, and I just decided I wanted to go spend time with my family instead of working a job. And at the time they had, you know, a rule, you can't have any days off during Christmas time. And I just said, well, the job's not worth it to me. So I just went in there one day and said, I want to go visit my family, so I'm gonna give you a 2-week notice. And that was pretty much it. So I went, visited the family, came back, and continued on with school. Now I knew I was in a 1-year program, so that program was about to end, and so as it was ending, I was like, what am I going to do next? And I was walking around school, and there was a flyer taped up on the walls that said, "Do you want to work for an online radio show?" And I was like, that's kind of cool. So I ripped off a little thing, and I called the number and talked to the guy, and he invited me to come down. And when I went down, it turned out to be, you know, where I was meeting him was it wasn't a record store, it was a company that their main business was reissuing albums, classic vinyl, not just rock and roll, but like classical, Blue Note jazz. They really did anything that was popular in the audiophile community. Now the audiophile community I'd never heard of until I went for this meeting, but they explained to me that audiophiles were basically people who spent thousands upon thousands of dollars for high-end stereo systems, mainly record player-based stereo systems, and they wanted to listen to the quietest, most perfect version of a record they could get. So this company, they had also gotten into the online thing, because online had just come out and everybody was starting a .com and everybody was selling their .com for a ton. So this record label, this audiophile reissuing label, what they were going to do is, that was a subsidiary, so their marketing guy was responsible for marketing both companies. He was specifically hired for that. And when he brought me in, he just, first thing he said was like, what are your favorite records? What are your favorite bands? What do you want to do with your life? And I explained all that to him. And I think one of the things he liked about me was he had never heard of a lot of the music that I was mentioning. And he had originally auditioned for Skid Row way back in the day. He was in a band called Phantom's Opera that never really made it big, but they were releasing records all the time, and he had been the singer of that. So he had had his own aspirations of grandeur in the 80s, but when Nirvana came around, it crushed all that. So he was now kind of a regular dude, had kids to take care of, and he was hired to start up this .com. And so he said, you know, one of the things I want to do is we're gonna do like a streaming service, and we're gonna look for independent artists that don't have their music out there anyway, and we're gonna try and break them. If we like them enough, the owner of our parent company will finance a record for them and produce a record and all that stuff. So all that to me sounded really cool, because he was telling me, hey, one of your things here, even though it wasn't gonna be a job, it was an internship, was that I could have my own radio show, and I could contact labels that I liked, or people, bands that I knew of or whatever, get their permission, get them to send me free stuff. They would always send me free records and stuff, and then I would play songs that I liked on my radio show. And through this, I actually got to interview Superdrag, who was one of my favorite bands at the time. They gave me backstage passes. I got to come to the show a couple hours early, and we did like a big, it was over an hour interview. I'm sure somewhere I probably still have the disc. I could probably upload it for you guys. But yeah, this job seemed okay, and I was doing it for a couple of months, and I was doing it, and I was doing a good job and everything, but I just never, after 2 or 3 months, there was no talk of ever giving me a job. And one day I just said to the guy who hired me, I said, dude, this is my last day here, I think. And he goes, why, you don't like it? I said, no, I like it, but I'm out of money, man. I said, after I pay my rent for next month, I'm out of money. I thought you guys, I thought an internship eventually led to getting a job. And he said, why didn't you say something? If you needed a job, you're running out of money, I'll go talk to Mike. So he went talk to the owner. The owner agreed to hire me on as part production assistant, because we had one guy who was the head of production, one guy who was marketing, who was the one that hired me for the .com. But I was basically hired to be both of their assistants. So my job then got really cool, because my job then entailed going to Bernie Grundman Mastering, who mastered all of Michael Jackson's records, Prince's records. I mean, his company itself, not just him, but Brian Big Bass, who works with him, have mastered most of the biggest records of all time. All the big rap stuff that came out in the 2000s, early 2000s, 90s and everything, that was all their place doing it. And we had 2 standing reservations or appointments every week to master stuff. And I remember saying to them, like, what happens if you don't have a record coming out that you don't need to master? And they go, we always have something that needs to be mastered. So they just always had these blocks of time set aside at Bernie Grundman. So my job became to go there while they were mastering, and what they would do, this audiophile company that I was now working for, they actually had deals with the original labels, the original music labels, to get possession of the master tapes. And we would get the master tapes, and then Bernie would do the mastering from there. So I actually got to be in the room with some of the most amazing jazz records. I was not a jazz fan. I found that out pretty quick, but it's classical records, things like that. And I got to hear them right off the master tapes. My job was, they had a computer set up in there, and I was supposed to capture high-end audio. So my job was, when Bernie started recording, I started recording, and when he stopped, or like a track went, I put a little divider in the track. So I really had an easy job. Like, for the first 2 hours of my day, that's what I would do. And then once Bernie was done cutting the lacquer, he would package it up in like this big styrofoam thing, and then I drove it an hour out to our pressing plant. So my job 4 days out of the week became just going to Bernie Grundman and/or taking the lacquers out to Camarillo. And then on those off days when we weren't doing the sessions, were days that they had finished production on records, and I'd have to go pick up the boxes and bring them back. So it wasn't really that bad of a job. But what happened was, they had a shipping guy who had quit, and they needed another shipping guy. So they had another intern that was just kind of out there. I don't even know how to describe him, but he was just one of those people that was just a little different than everyone else. And he realized that there was one guy that worked in the office who always talked to himself. So this intern guy started always messing with the guy who always talked to himself. And the owner actually used to think it was really funny. So he kind of like encouraged it to an extent. But then the guy who always talked to himself one day just snapped. He just couldn't take it anymore. And all of a sudden the owner goes, well, I mean, we can't have that going on around here. So I think the shipping guy is going to have to go. And I remember thinking to myself, you encouraged it. You know, it was one of those kind of environments, you know. But yeah, they totally encourage this craziness all the time. And then one day I get called into the owner's office and he says, hey, I'm gonna fire the shipping guy and I wanna give you the job along with a $2 an hour raise. And I thought about it for a second and I said, you know, I don't really wanna do that job and I don't really wanna take his job. I'd rather not. And he said, well, I already fired him. So this is the job I need you to do. And I said, well, how long will it be? Because it's not really, that's just something I don't want to do. I said, I used to watch shipping departments in my last job before I moved out here. I don't want to do that. And he said, oh, just do it for like a month until I can find the right person. And then I promise you, you'll be done. So 2.5 months later goes by, and the owner has now started treating me like the whipping boy. Every time anything goes wrong, he comes in, he starts yelling at me about something. Why is this box here? Why is this here? Why didn't you go do this? I'm like, nobody asked me to go do that. Well, you should have just asked there. Like, it was stuff like that. And I remember one day he did it, and he was just one of those people. He was always one of those people that needed a whipping boy in the office. Even my boss, who, like the person above me, the head of production, when I first started there, we didn't know each other. But after like 2 months, he joined my band and became my drummer. So we were very close friends, and I remember him saying, this guy needs a whipping boy all the time. And it got to a point where even my boss was like, dude, I think one of these days I'm just not coming back to work. I hate this guy, you know? And so one day, he was, you know, just going off about something, and about a half an hour after he did, I walked up to his office and I said, hey, so can I talk to you for a second? He's like, what can you do? Like, by that point, he'd all forgotten, you know, he'd totally forgotten he'd done it. I said, you told me when I did this shipping job that it would be for a month, and it's going on 3 months. I don't want to do it anymore. I don't like the way that I get treated when I'm doing it, and I see everybody that's had this job gets treated that way. And my next door neighbor works for production companies and movies, and he told me that he can help me get a job doing production assistant work if you don't have a plan to move me back into production here. And he goes, let me think about it and get back to you. So he immediately calls my boss and he says, you know, I don't think Jordan's very loyal. I think I'm gonna have to get rid of him. He goes, on what grounds? He does everything you ask him to do. What are you gonna do? And he goes, you know, I think he's taken some records. And I'll never forget, like, cause I got a call later from my friend Neil, who said, he goes, yeah, first thing he said was, he goes, I bet he has some of my records. And Neil said to him, everybody has your records. You let people take, I've heard you say it numerous times, take whatever you want, if you want it, and we'll write it off as a defective replacement. Oh, no, I've never said that. And Neil goes, yeah, you have. We all have your records. So if you're gonna accuse him of that, you gotta accuse everybody in this office, because you've told people before that if there's a particular record that you want, as long as it's not all the time, just go fill out a defective replacement form and they can have it. So then I get a call that night from the boss guy, the owner. He goes, hey, I know you were asking about getting a couple copies of the Roy Orbison records we put out. Did you ever get any of those? And I go, yeah, I got a copy of, I think it was Only the Lonely, I think. And he goes, oh, did you fill out a defective replacement form? And I said, well, I yelled up to Nicky and told him that I was gonna grab one, and he said he'd fill it out. And he goes, well, I'm not seeing a form for it. Can I talk to you in my office in the morning? So I thought it was like no big deal, really. I just thought it was going to be fill out a form. And I go in there, and one of the things that this guy, he was a pretty shiesty businessman. When I started there, I'd never heard of a contract employee, and when I got hired on, he goes, do you want to be a full employee or a contract employee? If you do contract employee, you'll get way more of your money in your pocket. And he goes, I always think it's better to be a contract employee. That's what he said. And I go, yeah, that's fine. Contract employee is fine. And so what I found out later was all of a sudden, so that day I go in there, I go, hey Mike, you said you want to talk to me? He goes, yeah, let's go over to Carl's Jr. And we go over there, and he goes, so I'm going to have to let you go for theft. And I go, theft of what? And he goes, well, you said that you took the only the Lonely LP. And I go, and I told Nikki that I was taking it, so what's the problem? He goes, well, you should have filled out that form, so I'm just going to let you go. And I go, all right, that's fine. So that was my end of that job, and of course, because you're a contract employee, you can't collect any kind of unemployment if you get fired that way. So it was a total BS thing, and then my boss, Neil, like the guy who, you know, production, whatever I've mentioned, my bandmate, calls me and he goes, yeah, we had a whole discussion about this last night, and he goes, I knew what he was gonna do, and so he said, so since he's done that now, he said, I threw my phone out the window while I was driving. He said, I'm calling you from my house right now. He goes, I'm no longer going to work anymore. And he didn't. He quit going to work. The owner had to then hire him on as an outside contractor while they could find somebody else to do the job, and he would have to come to work like one day a month to double check like print proofs and things like that. But Neil was gone. So I was looking for a job. I didn't have a job, and all of a sudden I used to go to this pizza place with my friends, and I'm in there one day, and this girl there is telling me how she worked for what was his Michael Medved's show. There was like some talk radio shows, and that she was a producer for those. And I said, well, if you hear of any jobs, let me know, because I don't have a job anymore. And she said, actually, I do know somebody who was trying to hire me, but they couldn't afford to pay what I want. And I said, what were you looking for? She said, oh, I told them they had to pay me $1,000 a week, and they don't want to pay that. They only want to pay $300 a week. And I go, I'll do $300 a week. or maybe it was $400. It was something like that, because I remember it was coming out to about $1,500 a month, somewhere around there. So she gave them my number, and they were a film production company. So I went, interviewed with them. The lady liked me right away, and she said, all I need you to do is answer phones, really. She said, just answer phones, and we're gonna go into, she said, this is a new production company. I used to be a part of another one, and I lost interest in that one, so I sold my stake in it, and now I'm starting up this one, and I wanna do like children's programming, children's shows, because we can get funding from various places. Like she was hitting up proposals from like Shaquille O'Neal and stuff, anything that had an educational basis you could get funding for. And so that was her plan. So she said, all I really need you to do is answer phones. And then about 2 days in, she said, you're too smart to do this. You seem to understand, you know, what we're doing here. And she explained to me how they produced a film and all the steps and everything. She said, if you'd like, since you have free time up here at the desk, you're more than welcome to read the script of what we're gonna work on. So I read it, and when I got done, I said, who are you thinking of approaching for the actor? Because I really think it's a James Spader type movie. And all of a sudden her eyes got all big, and she goes, that's a great choice. I hadn't even thought about him. And so then she started teaching me, because it was kind of a lower budget production, how you approached actors and how you looked up what they earned and how an actor was only worth what they were paid for last. So after about 2 weeks, all of a sudden I was the only one in the office. I was the only one showing up to work. There were two other people. There was a woman who ran the whole finance thing, and then the lady who was the owner, the president of this thing, who hired me. They were never coming to work, and all of a sudden I start getting calls from a penitentiary on our business phone. And of course I didn't accept it, and then they come in, I tell them, and they go, oh, if that happens again, answer it, accept it, because it's my brother. We're fighting a court case for him right now, and if he's calling, then it's probably something to do with the case. And immediately I'm like, this is okay, that's strange. So then 2 or 3 weeks go by, and she says, hey, can you get us some letterhead and everything made for the business? So I hire Neil's brother-in-law, my friend, my bandmate, who does that kind of stuff. He makes everything for them. They write him a check, and the check bounces, and he calls me, he goes, Jordan, the check bounced. I go, whoa, what? So I call the owner. She issues a new check. I take it out to him. 2 days later, he goes, Jordan, this check bounced too. Then I don't get my paycheck. Like all of a sudden I was supposed to get paid. They told me I had my choice of either getting paid weekly or bi-weekly, and I'd said bi-weekly. My check wasn't there, and then 2 weeks later, like I was a month behind on checks, and all of a sudden I find out she had been spending all of the company's money on her brother's legal defense and everything. She literally one day just said, I don't have the money to pay you anymore, but you can come still work on spec if you want. I said, I can't even afford to take the bus here, like if I'm not getting paid, so no, I can't. I'm not gonna, I was working, I think I worked every day, or I think I worked 4 days a week, 5 hours a day. That was my schedule. So again, I was out of a job. So unfortunately, my grandpa had to come and bail me out for, I wanna say 3 months. I just could not find any work because what had happened was I had a car at that time. My friend had a minivan that we always did all of our road trips and everything in, and then one day he's out looking around and he sees this van he can't live without. So he impulse buys another van and has the old one and talks me into buying it. He's like, here, I'll give you a really good deal on it. I just don't have space for 2 vans, and I'm getting married in like 2 weeks, and I wanna wrap this up. So I get the van from him, and my last day of work at that production office, the van won't start. And I go over and get some mechanics to come look at it, and they're like, well, this is wrong, this is wrong. And basically it was gonna be like over $1,000 fix to get the thing. So I just donated the thing as a tax write-off and got rid of it. And so I didn't have a car. And right at that point, the LA transportation system went on strike. So there were also no buses, no subways, no nothing. Any kind of job I was gonna get, I had to get, so I was gonna have to walk it. So the next job that I got, basically what happened was I kept looking, and I started, just because I was so freaking bored, I started hiking Runyon Canyon every day. And I would kind of go at the same time every day that I would run into this girl all the time. We would always run into each other. And one day I was finishing up my hike and she was starting, and I just said, hey, do you mind if I join you? And I just turned around and did the whole entire hike again. So I'd done it twice. And while we were talking, she was like, well, so what do you do for a job and everything? I said, right now, nothing. I'm a musician, and I have a band, but I lost my job 3 months ago, and I just can't find anything. And she goes, do you have a good driving record? And I said, yeah, I do. Why? And she said, I work at Jerry's Famous Deli, and we always seem to need a new delivery driver. They have like a bunch of different shifts. She said, I think right now they need a day driver, which would leave your nights open to do shows and play with your band and stuff. I go, that would be great. And she says, let me talk to my boss tomorrow. He's a real people person, and see if he has, if that job's still open. So she goes and she comes back and she says, I asked him and he said he filled the job that day. And I go, you're kidding. She goes, you know what? She goes, call him or go in there yourself. Ask for Warren Tepper. She said his dad used to write songs for Elvis. And sure enough, when I looked it up, his dad was one of the people that wrote a lot of the movie songs for Elvis. And she said he's such a people person. He had dreams of being in bands and everything when he was younger. If you go in and tell him, like, Warren, I'm a musician, I'm way down on my luck, I'm running out of money, I'm gonna have to leave. He goes, he will find a job for you. I promise you. And so, so I call and I try and talk to him on the phone. He's like, I'm sorry, I just don't have anything for you. He goes, if something comes up soon, I'll call you. I don't know why I did on that one. I just didn't take no for an answer, but like maybe 2 days later I went down there and I walked in and I just met him and I just said, I know you told me if something comes up that you'll keep me in mind, but I said, I just wanted to come in and say thank you face to face for at least, saying that you'll do that. I really appreciate it. You could have just said, I don't have anything and I'm sorry, hit me up later, some other time, but you didn't. And he looks at me and he just goes, you're a musician, right? I go, yeah. He goes, have you ever been a server? And I said, no. He goes, I'll tell you what, I'll hire you for the deli. He said, I'll give you a job in the deli and we'll find a way. We'll find a way to make this work. So the very next day, I'm all excited. I got a job, I'm supposed to report in 2 or 3 days, and he calls me, he says, hey Jordan, can you get me a copy of your driving record? we had one of our drivers quit last night after you left, so I now have a driving job for you, which was what I wanted because you made better tips. And one of the reasons that my friend Ebony was trying to get me a job there was that she said, if you work during the day, the drivers always deliver to like RCA and Capitol, like all these different record labels. Maybe you can like drop your CD or something there. So that was kind of my plan, and that was the job that I got for the next, I want to say 4 years. My job then became 5 days a week working at Jerry's Famous Deli, delivering food, delivering deli food. One of the reasons I kind of wanted to do it was because Andy Kaufman had worked there, and I loved Andy Kaufman, and they even had pictures of Andy up inside the place, and I was just like, if I'm gonna work somewhere, this is, I don't know, it's just kind of a cool thing to my story. You know, I've worked at Tower, I've worked for a record reissuing label, and now I'm working for like Jerry's Deli. Not a huge thing, but sure enough, like she said, exactly what she told me could happen did happen. I would meet all kinds of different people. I delivered all kinds of famous people. I became friends with Johnny Gill there for a while. And one day I'm delivering to RCA. They ordered about once a week. And the guy who was ordering the food was one of the A&R people. And I'll never forget dropping the food off to him. And I don't know why I did this, because we never spoke or anything. I just said, you ever heard of a band called Arcade Fire? And he goes, no, I haven't. And he just starts looking through his food to make sure, and I go, oh, my friend just opened for him and said they're amazing. And he goes, oh, okay, cool. Like totally blowing me off, right? 2 weeks later, same guy orders food, requests in the thing my name, says, please have Jordan deliver. So I show up, I go into his office to have him sign the ticket and everything, he's signing the ticket, he's got a smile on his face, and he looks up and he goes, you really called it with that Arcade Fire thing. They've really blown up since you told me about him. He goes, how'd you know about them? I said, a friend of mine in Ohio, just, you know, he's always got his ear to the ground for cool stuff. And you know, from the time that my friend Adam had told me about that record, I had went out and got it, and I turned about 5 of my friends onto it. So people were already like liking it. Everybody that I knew liked it. Then all of a sudden, our radio station in LA, K-Rock, started playing it. So then the guy at RCA, when he heard that and heard who it was and everything, he goes, wait a minute, we should have been on top of this, and that kid that delivered knew about it. So when I went in there, he goes, how did you know about it? And I told him, he said, who else should I look for now? And I said, well, my band's pretty good. And he goes, okay, I'll listen to your band. Bring me your CD, bring me something. He goes, bring me like 3 songs to check out. So next time I went, that's what I did. So I gave it to him. Didn't hear anything. I thought for sure, you know, I'm like, oh, and plus one of the cool things about going to RCA and that particular time was he had like stacks of CDs, everything that RCA released or whatever. And because I had given him that tip on Arcade Fire and everything, he goes, why don't you go over there and take anything you want? Go take any music that you want and like anything you're interested in checking out. I remember leaving there with like 12 CDs. I had all of the Strokes, all of Kings of Leon. I had all kinds of stuff. And he was even saying, you should check this out. You should check this out. This is going to be big, like all that kind of stuff. So drop off my CD. Maybe a week later, he orders food and he's just totally different to me. Like not cool at all. And he goes, so you're probably wondering what I thought of your CD, right? And I go, yeah. He goes, well, it's good, but it's not hit music. He goes, I don't think you have one song on your whole record that's less than 4 minutes. And I go, yeah, probably not. He goes, most of your songs have a 45-second interlude. And I go, yeah. He goes, that's just not radio friendly. He goes, now I'm not saying the music's not good. He goes, it is good. He goes, it's like, there's definitely an audience for it. And he goes, it's very, I think at the time they called it AAA or radio, like album-oriented rock, something like that, where he's like, you're making records. You're making a full CD for someone to listen to. He goes, what we're doing here is we're looking for 2.5-minute songs that are hits. And I go, I understand. He goes, so don't take this as like a, you know, you suck and you should give up. He's like, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying what you're doing just isn't what we're doing right now. And I was like, oh man, you know, that was rough, because I thought for sure like, oh, this will be the case. And then I tried to organize a tour with my band, and everybody had real jobs, so you know, we got a couple of the dates booked and then had to cancel the tour. And I started trying to figure out how can I either reform a band with a couple of different members that are more able to travel and do stuff that I want to do with this? Or do I just try and figure out how to do it solo? And so right at that time, I just got so fed up working at Jerry's Deli. There were just some people that worked there that were really unhappy with their life, and they came to work and they just put it on you all the time. And it got to a point where it just was no fun anymore. So I just one day, I called the main office, and they go, well, you know, I know you're having problems with Dave, and everybody has problems with Dave, but you guys got to learn to work together. And I just remember saying, I don't want to work together anymore. And she said, what? And I said, if I quit right now, like, how does that affect me if somebody calls asking about, you know, working here? And she goes, well, by law, we're not allowed to tell whether you quit or got fired. All we can do is say how long you worked here. And I go, then I quit. And I quit. I just quit and never went back. So I was looking for jobs on Craigslist, and all of a sudden I saw this company wanted a night driver. They were an up-and-coming chef services. Never at the time had these ever, nobody had heard of these. These didn't exist. And this lady who had been, she had been the head of human resources for a handful of major companies like Coach and Capitol Records, and there was a whole, like 6 or 7 at the time. She was so smart and you know, done so well for herself and invested so well that she retired at the age of 38. And her brother had decided to start up this business where it was a personal chef service, and it was mainly for people who were trying to get in shape or whatever. And what we would do is we had a nutritionist on staff who would meet with these people, or was already, you know, celebrity doctor or something like that, and they would recommend our company to their clients. So we ended up having quite a few celebrity, actually I would say probably 75% were celebrities, though at the time I didn't know they were, because they were either production heads or famous, like I didn't know who Alan Ball was, and he was one of our clients. I was going to his house all the time, like, you know. Then when I found out who he was, you know, what was the guy who did, oh, I forget his name, never mind, another director, a couple of directors, but anyway, I met with this lady and she told me, you know, my goal is I'm starting this up. Right now we only have about 15 clients. They're kind of all over Los Angeles, but I have a company car and I want you to, you know, drop them off all night long. Our goal is to drop them off while people are sleeping so that when they wake up, it's right at their front door. So she said, you'll start working at 10:30 at night, and whenever you finish is whenever you finish, but we really need them to be done by like 6 or 7. I go, okay, no problem. So that was a pretty cool job, even though it was like, at first it was weird getting used to like working all night, driving all night long and everything, but I really enjoyed it because there was nobody on the road. I went from Pasadena all the way up to out to Malibu, all the way down the Pacific Coast Highway down to Redondo Beach. I mean, I really saw a lot of this city at that time, and I'd have stuff all tucked in between, you know, and Culver City and Santa Monica, and I just, you know, you had to work your way all the way around. But one of the things I liked was it gave me a lot of time to think, which I loved, a lot of time to listen to music, and a lot of time to listen to Art Bell. Now, during this time, I kind of fell into a depression because my band, we weren't doing anything anymore, and I didn't really know what to do with it, and I knew that doing this job wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do forever. Even though, when I was hired, I was told, hey, even though, you know, we're starting small and everything, our goal is to be big, be in every town, all that, so I won't forget the people that start with me. So I want to make sure that you always make more money than you have before, and you will, you know, when I can, I'll get everybody insurance, and you'll have a 401k and all that stuff. So it all sounded good, and I worked there for about 6 years, and through there I got to meet Eddie Van Halen, I got to meet Quentin Tarantino. I went to these people's houses, got to talk to them. They were really nice. It was a great kind of weird time in my life, but it was a fun time. And one of the things that really changed during this was, out of nowhere, I just thought of this comedian that my friend Kevin and I used to always talk about, because Kevin knew him. His name was Joey Coco Diaz. And just one day, randomly on the computer at work, I just said, wonder if Joey Coco Diaz is still alive. And I look him up and I see that he has a podcast. And at that time, I had heard of a podcast because Mark Maron had a podcast, but nobody was listening to podcasts really. So I found a site that I could listen to the podcast, and I just got addicted to listen to Joey Diaz. He had a show with Felicia Michaels at the time. It was called Beauty and the Beast. And Joey basically would just tell stories of his life, all of his failures, all the bad stuff he had done. And the moral to this was always, but look at where I'm at now. All the stuff I've done, all the things that you've done in the past don't define you unless you are unwilling to change. And he would tell about all the struggles he had, but then he would talk about all the great times that he had. And I remember just thinking, God, this guy was in prison for kidnapping. He literally had someone locked in his trunk, and now he's out living a good life. If he can do it, I can do it, surely. So one day I just sent him an email and just said, man, I said, I work this job, I drive all night, I have nothing to look forward to. Like, I'm just so depressed. I came out here to do music, but I lost the interest in doing music. And I said, but I met this lady who was a famous actress, and she was convinced that I should do something as far as acting. And I said, and she even started helping teach me and everything, but then she passed away. I said, to be honest, I don't know, I want to try that, but I don't even know how you start. I don't know what the first step is to even getting an audition. And he wrote me back probably a giant 5-paragraph letter. First off, telling me not to give up hope, and that he was proud that I was listening and that I was writing to him, and that it's people like me that keep him going. And that's why he shares his stories. And he said, next time I'm doing a show, I want you to come out. I want to meet you face to face. You're family now. And then he, for the rest of the letter, said, this is what you need to do. You need to sign up for the acting sides. You need to get an account with this place and this place so that you can see what the breakdowns are that are getting posted. Then you need to go get yourself a headshot. You need to find somebody that does, if you're going to do commercial, you need a commercial headshot. If you're going to do theatrical, you need theatrical. And you need to figure out which one you want to do. Most people start with commercial. And he just gave me a lot of good advice on how to get going. And I'll never forget, I just remember thinking, like, I never thought he would even respond, and sure enough, he detailed it all. And then I went out and I met him, and he just became a real source of inspiration. Whenever he would see me, he would always jokingly, how's the acting going? And I go, well, I auditioned for this, or I got my first audition. He go, good, my man, good for you. And then I'll never forget, one day I show up to one of his shows, and I walk up to him and I say, Joey, I signed with Aqua Talent today. And he goes, I'm with Aqua Talent. Good job, brother. It was one of those things, like he hugged me. He said, man, I am so proud of you. He goes, I'll never forget that letter, that first letter you wrote, how sad you were and how you had nothing to look forward to. And he's like, look at you now. He said, you got it. He goes, an agent is a big deal. Getting an agent in this town is a big deal. And he goes, and especially for you, because I think I was 32 at the time. He said, you are not at an age that agents really want to sign you. They want beautiful girls, or they want people that are established, or they want young people, or they want dads. He goes, and you're too young to be a dad, and you're too old to be an 18 to 25. Or he goes, says a lot about what you did in that meeting that they signed you and took you on. He said, I'm proud of you, brother. And I had been, I've been doing that driving job and everything all the time. I was losing hope. And I had a girlfriend at the time, and she just said, I think between the two of us making money, I don't think you need to work that night job anymore. And what had happened, the main reason I wanted to leave it was, for one thing, it was going nowhere, but everything that I was told when I started was kind of not true. They said, the more we grow, the more money you'll make. That wasn't true. The bigger we grew, the more drivers that she hired, which meant the less in hours that I got paid, and we only had one company vehicle. So then it became, since we had like 5 drivers, all of us got to use, other than one person, got to use their own vehicle and get the mileage. And she had so many drivers that my mileage went from like 120 miles a night down to like 60 miles a night. And so I was losing so much money working there. And I just remember at that time thinking, well, I tried to do it the right way. I tried to find someone starting a business. I tried to be loyal. I tried to start it from the ground up and take them at their word, and all they did was screw me over in the end. And I just realized, I'm like, that's what bosses do. The boss is looking at their bottom line and what they're trying to accomplish. They really don't care about the people beneath them, except to keep them working there. So that became my goal. My goal now was, how the F do I get a job where I don't have a boss anymore? And so with that girlfriend and everything, I just thought, you know what, she's right. Let's just start auditioning, doing background work, catering job, whatever it takes. I just don't want to have a night job like this anymore. And to be honest, I know I've said this countless times, but every great documentary on anyone successful that I've admired, they all got somewhere when they gave up their job. When they threw caution to the wind with something they shouldn't have done, most people wouldn't have done, that's when they had success. So that was what I started doing. I started for the next couple of years working hard, taking on every audition I could get, which weren't many, maybe one a month if I was lucky. And everyone else I knew, like that was at the Comedy Store, were getting 2, 3 a day. I get one a month. Things just weren't going the right way. And then finally, I took an acting, it was called a casting director's workshop is what they called them. And all these casting directors in town would give up a night for, like, say 4 hours, and they would give you a 15-minute increment. You paid like $30 to $40, and you could go in and do an audition, a little scene for them, and they would ask you questions and then have you do a scene, and they would tell you what they thought about you, what their impression of you was, so that you could either A, know what you're working with and how to present yourself differently, or B, if they like you, they're going to call you in. So that's really what changed my life. All those jobs and everything, I was always, it was kind of funny because I was always learning something along the way in all those jobs, but it wasn't until I threw caution to the wind and didn't have a job that all of a sudden I remember always thinking to myself, what happens if nothing shows up? Like, I remember saying that to Joey. I go, man, I quit my job and I don't really have any real source of revenue. He goes, you ever look at a single dad that has like 2 kids and you wonder, how the hell does he do it? I go, yeah. He goes, you know how he does it? He just does it. He's like, he needs to do it, it just happens. He's like, the world has a weird, mysterious way of things come into your life when you need them. And he was right. Every time it seemed like that I was like getting low on money, some weird, like an audition or some great job or something would come out of the blue and I'd get an extra couple of, $2,000 out of nowhere, and I go, wow, man, what are the odds that would happen? I always think you get signs like that in your life, and I've always, since I've been in Los Angeles, I've always just followed those signs. Whatever happened, I just rolled with it, because the one thing that I've learned in my life is that only you truly believe in you, and only you know what your talents are in every aspect of what you're doing. And some people, I think when you move out here, they go, oh, I'm too fat, I'm too ugly, I'm too this, I'm too that, whatever it is they think won't make them successful, or that they're not going to be able to be whatever it is that they want to be. But here's the reality, and this is what my commercial acting teacher told me, and it's something that I have lived by ever since. He said, take a look at yourself in the mirror, write down what you hate about yourself, and that's where you're going to make your money. He said, it's just one of those things. What makes you different is what you bring to the table. He's like, if you look like everybody else, you act like everybody else, you are everybody else. And I always just thought that was such a good lesson to impart, was that it's just be you. Like, they're not looking, sometimes they're not looking for a pretty face. They're not looking for this, they're looking for a personality. They're looking for just something that grabs them, someone that grabs them. And, I just always have followed that ever since. I've always kind of been just one of those people that I was just going to do what I was going to do anyway. But all those lessons along the line, every single one of them taught me the person that I work for, in the end, they're not going to be there for me. So, I always was working towards how can I be working for myself. So that was always kind of what my life and my goal in life was. And now it's kind of what I get to do. So those are all the jobs that I had up until this point. That was a 20-year span. And now I've been working on this channel on YouTube solely for at least 3 years, and I started it 4.5, almost 5 years ago. So I did have to continue doing all the odd jobs and everything along the way. But seriously, when it's crazy. I gave up my SAG membership, which is what basically gets you on in movies and TV and stuff. You have to be a Screen Actors Guild member to be able to do those. It's a union. I remember when I got all the vouchers that I needed, and I called Joey and I said, you know, some people are telling me I shouldn't join the union. He goes, if you earn those vouchers and you're able to join the union, that's telling you that you earned that. Like, you need to sign up for that. You need to join that, because that's where the big dogs play. And he was totally right at that time. I think if I wouldn't have joined the union at that time, I probably would have started giving up, because I think you can only take a certain amount of time of just nothing happening before it really starts having a negative mental impact on you. And just getting those vouchers and being notified that I was eligible to join SAG, that was just like one more ladder that had been slid down to me, that I was going, where do I go from here? Where do I go from here? Oh, there's a new ladder, you know? It just kept me going until I figured out what I really wanted to do. So I hope that helps you guys. I hope you get something from that. And if you were wondering on all those years, what was he doing before he was doing this? What are the jobs? What were his experiences? That's it. I pretty much was always having crazy experiences, and I always tried to, in some way or another, keep my job in an entertainment field, even, and many times I didn't know it was going to be, but yet getting to hang out with Eddie Van Halen, getting to meet Tarantino and things like that. Those are stories that I will have for a lifetime, and there are a lot of stories that I've gotten to share on here with you guys.
And all of that story happened before I ever knew this guy. Right?
So 2 things that I forgot to add to this story was that when I told you about the girlfriend that inspired me to quit my job, she said, oh, between the 2 of us, we can make it. You know, our money together, we'll be able to make it. When I put my notice in for my job the very last day, when I came home, she had moved out. So I ended up doing all that alone. And another funny part to this story was that when I went to interview at that place, I guess it was an internship or whatever, when I went to interview there, they said, this building that you're in, Jimi Hendrix used to record in. And I never thought really that much about it. And then when I started vlogging, if you go back and look up TTG Studios or Two Terrible Guys Studios, that was where I worked, and that was where Jimi Hendrix used to record. All right, my friends, thank you all for watching. Thank you, Jill Newhouse, for becoming my newest Patreon. We'll catch you all next time. Have a great night, and goodbye.